I want to share with you a little bit of information about young children, especially the idea that they are so feeling-based compared to adults that are thinking-based. Knowing the difference between these two can really help you raise children more effectively. It can help you raise happier children, and it can help your parenting immensely when it comes to discipline and communication. And most importantly, it can make you a stronger and more connected parent. The easiest way to start with this is to just take them one at a time. Let's talk about feeling-based. What does feeling-based mean? Children are more concrete beings. Their brains are not developed fully yet, and so they act and react from a feeling base. They're a little bit more self-focused, which means just consumed with themselves. They want what they want when they want it. Also, when things happen that are stressful or bad, they tend to think it's their fault. So that's the self-centered part of who they are. It's the egocentric state. Young children are also more play-oriented, so they get their problems worked out and they work out their life issues with play. They're more relational. They're connected more to people. They can feel what's going on way better than they can think about it because their brains aren't developed. And they want to spend time in relationship and playing. So just think about it that way. They're very play-oriented and they're very relational. So connection with people is important. It helps their self-worth. It helps their self-confidence. It helps them know that they matter. And it also helps them learn just by having relationship with other people, the back and forth of smiling faces, of nonverbal communication. It can also work in reverse when they get really tough or mean or aggressive behavior towards them because it can shut them down and make them feel more fear-based. So feeling-based describes a concrete, relational thinker that plays and acts out their feelings through the materials that are in front of them, through the relationship they have, through the playground they have. They act and react from a feeling base. Then there's the thinking-based people. That we basically describe as more of the grown-ups. So once our brain's fully developed and we're in our teenage years, and especially for people who are parents, you're more abstract in your thinking. You can process multi-step directions and you can figure out solutions to problems just by thinking it in your head. The old quote I remember from graduate school was that big people think that little people think like big people think. It teaches us as parents to pay attention to young children because they don't always think like we do. And we have to describe things in words that children can understand. So thinking-based people are more logical, they are more abstract. They're able to combine thoughts and feelings together. They're also achievement-oriented. As parents, we tend to be achievement-oriented, meaning I want my child to excel. I want them to perform. I want them to build, to grow, to have success. And so when they're building with blocks, building a sandcastle, we want them to feel the accomplishment when really children don't need to feel that accomplishment. Also, as adults, we tend to be much more transactional, thinking long-term and trying to figure out what the best way is to do something when children just figure out the way they want to do it and they go with it. So parents ask me all the time, well, what do we do with this knowledge, Tom? Knowing that children are feeling-based and that we're thinking-based, how do we get the most out of our parenting and our relationship with our children? The answer is communicating. And you can actually communicate with children without words. I've talked in a previous video about the 10-minute drill. It's basically learning how to communicate with your child and understand where your child's coming from without having to have a back and forth verbal dialogue with them. So one way to do that is through what's called tracking. Tracking is basically saying out loud what your children are doing. It's the radio announcer at a sporting event that if you can't see it in person, the play-by-play and color analyst tell you about the game and you can kind of visualize it in your head. The more that you talk about what your children are doing, the more that they will know you're connected, that you're interested, that you're invested, and that you're watching them. So if you see them building with blocks or sand, you say, wow, it looks like you're going to put that one on top of that one, and now you're scooping that one over here and putting it there, and now it looks like you're going to move from that spot over to another spot. You're basically just describing what they're doing. The second piece to that is reflecting. Reflecting is taking the feeling that you think they're having. You're assuming, you're guessing, you're looking at, you're noticing, and you're going to say that in words. So it's not going to be telling children how they feel. It's going to be noticing how you see them feeling and give them that feedback. So instead of saying, you're angry, You're so unhappy. You're disgusted with that. Instead of telling them that, you're going to say the basic looks like, seems like, sounds like before any words that you say. It looks like you're really frustrated. It seems like you're having a hard time with that. It sounds like you've just had it and you're just disgusted with that. So you're going to say how they feel with words. So if you describe what they're doing and you say how they feel, at least what you notice, they're going to feel more confident, more understood, more secure as people. It doesn't give you any magical solution or prize right then all the time, but in the long run it does. And it cuts down on discipline. The other piece to remember that is that observing carefully what your children are doing, how they feel, is important. Watch your children, even if they're on the other side of the room and you can say, whoa, it looks like you really are having a hard time with that over there. Or it seems like you're really happy because I can see you smiling. You want to say that not just when they're right next to you or you're talking to them, but when they're in other places. You can do that with other children too, your friends' children or people that you see at the park. And also remember the body language that you use. Whether or not you're showing body language where your arms are crossed and you're frustrated, because maybe you've got bills to pay or a phone call that was really upsetting and they could read the body language on. Just concentrate on the body language you use with your children, especially when you get frustrated, irritated, or you're like there we go again. Try really hard not to show that if possible. All parents do it. It's a natural thing. Don't get carried away if it happens, but just be aware of it and try to show them the body language where you're interested, where you're invested, where you're leaning into them, where you're getting down on their level to see what they're doing and listening to what they have to say and tracking and reflecting that. So the body language by you is critical. Now you might ask, what does this do if I track, if I reflect, if I understand thinking based versus feeling based? Well, it makes you a more conscientious and involved and intentional parent. You become child focused. You become centered on who they are, not to give them what they want or just to pay attention to them all the time. But when you do interact with your children, you're saying things that show them you care. You're going to start looking at who your child is rather than just giving directions and trying to tell them what they're supposed to do or asking them questions or giving commands. You're going to start looking to understand them. And when you do need to give them direction or commands, you can say, I need you to do this right now. It's time to do this right now. Instead of constantly asking questions. It's one of the mistakes I see most parents make is they ask way too many questions. So if you want to know if you do, record yourself in a regular conversation in the kitchen or living room with your child and go back and watch it and see how many questions you ask. Also, this is going to make you a more consistent parent. You're going to need discipline less. You're going to be attentive more. And you're going to narrow down the vocabulary so it focuses on your child's age. You're not going to communicate with a 15-year-old the same way you do your 5-year-old, but you're going to use the same philosophy. With a 15-year-old, you're going to say, yeah, I know, it stinks, like it's not at all what you expected and you wanted today to go different and now it's like, you think it's all blown and busted and, it's like it's my fault. You talk more casually, more maturely with a 15-year-old than a 5-year-old where you would say, it looks like you're really frustrated and upset. Very simple because of the concrete brain. And lastly, it's going to make you a happier parent, I promise you, because you're now going to understand your child. You're going to have better communication with them. You're going to need discipline less, and you're going to appreciate the time you have with them. And having these skills as a parent of just tracking and reflecting, understanding that they're very concrete, feeling-based people, will help you lower the pressure and the expectations, and you will be a happier, better parent. You might also ask, what kind of person is this going to make my child if I do this? Well, that's a great question, and the answer is definitely a more confident one. The more understood people feel, the more willing they are to do better, to work harder, to act more maturely. They're going to feel understood. It's not just about giving children what they want and catering to them and spoiling them. That's nothing about what this is. This is about communicating with them, understanding their feelings and where they come from and what's hard and what's frustrating and what's exciting and the good and the bad of life. And the relationship with you will make them more confident. It's also going to make your children more secure because they're going to have a connection with you. They're not going to need to fight for attention. They're not going to feel misunderstood. you're going to be communicating on their level, and they're going to have no trouble feeling like somebody in this world gets me. And with that security, your children are going to be more in touch with their feelings. They're going to understand how they feel. They're going to be able to put words to how they feel. They're going to be able to communicate to you, not in a hardcore action of acting out or a meltdown. They're going to be able to communicate to you by using words as they grow up and by sharing feelings when they're sad or worried or frustrated or angry. Because of that constant feeling of being understood and being recognized, they will now know how to communicate, which builds healthier, stronger relationships for them, and they will want to be around you more. So take all of these pieces, watch this video again, and remember, if you can understand the basics of feeling-based versus thinking-based, of how to work with your children because they are feeling-based when they're young, through tracking and reflecting and body language, and you can understand that this is going to make you a more child-focused person, and you're going to be connecting with your child, which is going to make discipline way easier, and the communication and relationship stronger, your children will benefit and they'll become so much more successful, confident people as they grow up with healthy relationships. Try this. I can't wait to hear how it goes.